Ultimate Collectibles here with Wolverine Episode 7. So if you've been watching my channel, you know I'm reviewing all the different Wolverine statues I have, whether they're a single Wolverine piece or a diorama. And you may be confused because episodes 4 and 6 haven't been posted yet. Well, the problem is I film these reviews when I have time and then edit them when I have time, and it could be 1, 2, 3, 4 plus weeks before I actually post it. So episode 4 and 6 have actually been filmed, they're just not edited and posted. And one might be edited, I don't know, there's so many of them. But this is going to be episode 7, so this may go up before then, but this is obviously not a Wolverine piece, but Wolverine is in it. So let's jump in and look at this custom Magneto vs. Wolverine diorama. Yeah. As I said, this is a custom quarter scale Wolverine vs. Magneto piece. This is called Wolf Slayer. This is an adaptation from a comic book where Magneto is obviously taking the what the hell is wrong with it? Adamantium out of Wolverine. It's on the comic book cover, and it's kind of a tale as old as time, Beauty and the Beast. Tale as old as time. So this is a custom piece, quarter scale. It cost $800 retail, and then the shipping was quite a bit. It was a little overpriced in my opinion. It was almost $500 for shipping, which it was a large box, but not that significantly heavy. So this guy is 60 edition size. There are 60 pieces. There are a few different switch outs, mostly on Magneto. So first, he actually has 3 different head sculpts. The first is the unmasked that you see here. Then you have a masked version where he has his mouth closed, very similar to the unmasked version, and then a masked version with a menacing face, which is probably the one I would display of the 3 different choices. Then his hands have 2 switch outs. They have the ones here where his hands are kind of open and he's using his spirit fingers to kind of raise Wolverine up. And then the other piece, actually, the other hands are closed fists. And they both kind of have their own merit in each way. Piece came in one large box. It was kind of a bitch to unpack. Lots of black foam, and as you can see here in the picture, tons and tons of pieces with no direction on how to put it together. So always a blast when you have that. And as I put it together, unfortunately I did run into quite a few quality control issues, QC issues, ranging from pieces not fitting in correctly, even though it was obviously the correct piece. There are some gaps where pieces are supposed to fit. One of the big problems, as you see on here, there's really no close-ups, but the little adamantium pieces coming out of Wolverine, they don't stay in very well. You pretty much have to glue quite a few of them, and they are in the right spots. I looked at a whole bunch of other collectors in the prototype, and the prototype looks a little bit different. And worst of all, Magneto doesn't sit flush, so they have this really cool floating aspect to him, but his peg, it just doesn't fit in the back. So there's a huge lean on this statue, and if I keep it in, it's just going to get worse and worse. Unfortunately, I've had no resolution with the commissioner. So that is what it is. So jumping into the concept and design on this statue, this is top-notch concept. First of all, I've said it many times, my top 5 characters are Magneto and Wolverine, so I would never pass up a statue that has both of them on there, hence me pulling the trigger on this, despite some reservations, which we'll talk about. But this piece right here, and you know what, I just noticed something. I'm missing a piece. There is a hole that nothing is going in. Not a shock with all the other QC issues there were. However, the concept of this is awesome. So Magneto's in some type of metal factory or metal area where there's, you know, pillars and coils and steel and rebarb and stuff like that. That's all over, and he's used that to entrap Wolverine. There's spears, metal wrought iron going straight through him. Then he's pulling the adamantium out of Wolverine. He's completely almost liquefied one of his hands. His claws are completely off. And Magneto, they had him, the way he's supposed to be structured without the lean is he's essentially floating. And most Magneto statues do have a floating element to it, but this one's really good. How, if the peg actually worked, it would be really good. But, and he's standing above him and using his power to raise Wolverine up. And his face doesn't quite fit his calm face. You would think if he's destroying, you know, one of the quintessential X-Men, be a little more emotional or happy. He looks kind of bored. His face with the mask portrait I like fits this a little bit better. So concept, very, very cool. There are some issues with the design, as I talked about some of the quality issues with Magneto's peg. Wolverine's very loose on here, and as I said, his adamantium doesn't fit very well. So concept and design, some issues regarding that. Some other issues as well is Wolverine has no blood on him. So all of this is happening, his body is being ripped open, there's not a drop of blood or a blood stain. There are holes in Wolverine's body where no adamantium is coming out, so that's kind of weird. It could just be wear in his uniform, I'm not really sure. But it's very, very interesting, so we'll leave it at that. With Magneto himself, some of the issues is his costume's very worn and old and lots of tears from Wolverine, but again, no blood, and it's just the uniform that's torn, so you don't see any skin underneath that. So it looks like Wolverine tore his uniform about 20 times, but he never penetrated the skin, which is very odd and just doesn't follow the storyline very well. So overall, concept is amazing, 10 out of 10. Design of the concept, pretty weak, unfortunately. As you see, I switched out his head, and as I was doing it, something I forgot with the QC process. His hands and head switch out, they don't fit the best. They don't fit bad, but there's a magnet. It doesn't even feel like the magnet works. It almost feels like a key. So I almost wonder if the QC process of this was rushed because it was sent out right before Chinese New Year and it had been delayed and delayed for an art print that apparently it was delayed so the art print could be done, but then they never sent any art prints to anybody. So a few misses there. But anyway, generally I talk about paint and sculpt together lately to try and save some time. I'm going to separate them. So first I want to talk about the sculpt on this. The bottom base is sculpted decent. It really shows a lot of detail in the different metal workings that are going on of this factory. I think the one big miss on this is they could have added some texture. It looks like a brand new factory or metal contraption other than the wrought iron beams coming out. There's some age and wear in there, mostly from the paint though, not from the sculpt. But throughout it looks cool. I do like it. There's a few marks here and there, which could be QC issues where it was scratched because it's very inconsistent. But it's not a bad base by any means. It's very large, but with a diorama of two characters, you traditionally would have something this large. Then moving up to the sculpt on Wolverine, I don't like it. I'm just being very honest. He's very bulky, and the anatomy isn't the best. It's not horrid, but it's not the best. The texture is almost overpowering. The way that his suit is laid out, as you see right here, there's some really weird aspects to his suit. Almost like the seam lines are way overdone. And then, you know, moving into the small parts of his skin that you can see, there's gaps where the adamantium's coming out, and the design of the anatomy of the arms with the muscles and the veins just isn't good. And the paint job on both the suit and the arms is very bland on Wolverine as well. One thing I don't really understand, I guess I am going to talk about paint, I'm sorry. The one thing I don't understand is the Wolverine has different blues all over his suit. There's about 4 or 5 different shades, so it doesn't look good. And same with the adamantium coming out of his body, it's all different colors, which that doesn't make sense either. And again, you think there would be some blood involved. Then Wolverine's portrait, I don't like. Unfortunately, I think it's a big miss. Not only the fact that the top of his helmet or his mask is a completely different color than the bottom, but there's just not a lot of definition in his face, and again the paint job is very bland. So unfortunately I think it's a big miss on Wolverine. It is what it is. So let's move on to Magneto, and you know, after I talk about something bad, I want to talk about something good. So Magneto's cape is very cool. I really like it. I think both the paint job, the sculpt, and the position of it make it look very good. It's a little long for a Magneto cape, but I like how it is in the statue. It's smooth, and it really looks like he's flying. Then I'm going to get into Magneto, and I'm very disappointed. I'm trying to be politically correct in this review, but the sculpt and the paint job are very bad. So starting at the first, his feet, it looks like he has frickin' bozo shoes on, where, you know, the ends of his feet are 10 times wider than the middle part of his feet. Maybe he has 9 or 10 toes, I don't know. So it doesn't look good, and the paint is almost the exact same color as the cape, which is kind of stupid because you'd want some kind of contrast. And the texture over Magneto is worse than Wolverine. It's way overpowering. It just doesn't look good. And I don't think I'm alone in this, but it could just be my opinion. If there's some collectors out there that have this and love it, you know, that's great. His thigh, he has mega thighs. The thighs are almost as thick as his torso, which again is kind of a big miss on the anatomy. And again, what I talked about during design, he has all these rips throughout his costume, but it doesn't rip down to his skin. So either it was supposed to rip down to his skin and they just got lazy on the paint job, or apparently he has some suit that will rip, but it won't rip the absolute inside of it. The shin guards and buckle straps look okay on his shins and his legs, but they look like crap on his arms. It actually looks like there's a gap. So it looks like if this was mixed media, it would actually move back and forth. There's a little bit of gap, so big miss on the sculpt there. His torso looks horrible. It almost looks like a lion. And the paint jobs on it, the dark reds and the darker blackish reds, look horrible. I'm sorry. He has the same issues with his biceps that he had with his thighs. They're huge. They're about 6 times. They're Popeye-like, Popeye character. I just don't like it. His collar, there's a big gap underneath it. So his head sculpts, the paint's very bland. It kind of looks okay. You know, when you have a statue like this and you're so excited about the concept and the possibility, and it's just a failure in execution, and I really don't want to beat a dead horse, because, you know, when you know, shout out to anyone who's creating a custom piece out there. It's difficult. You have a lot of people you want to please, especially with so many popular characters, or tackling some popular characters. But and there's always going to be haters. There's always going to be people that don't like it and offer constructive criticism. But overall, I think the big miss in this statue, and what I would have done differently, what I would have preferred, is the anatomy and the paint. The rest of the stuff, besides Magneto not fitting into his peg, that's an issue that has to be fixed, because eventually he's going to fall over and the statue will be more worthless than it is now. But there should have been some feedback on the anatomy and the paint on both Wolverine and Magneto. So unfortunately for me, this is a big miss. By me reviewing this, it's going to diminish the value of me trying to sell it, so I don't know if I'll ever sell it. One of my good friends, he got one as well, and he shares very similar opinions to me, and we joke that we'll display it from 15 feet away. Actually, I think I've had that joke with a few different people, because 15 feet away, it looks pretty damn good. Nothing but respect and love to the commissioner and the factory that made this. It's just not my cup of tea. I disagree with some things on it, but that's my opinion. And if anyone did receive this and they love it, congratulations, because it is a cool concept and design. So I appreciate you watching. If you have any comments, please try and keep them politically correct for the statue, because a lot of time and energy was put into this, even though it may not be the best result in some people's opinion. But appreciate you watching. I will see you next time. Thanks so much. Take care.